Teaching inmates, doing evangelism, and all sorts of things. And so glad you joined us for what is to be kind of a devotional, words of encouragement, and some other things that we'll do on this show from time to time. But really what it's meant to do is kind of help you as you are maybe on your way to work, maybe you're on your way home from work, no matter what, whatever time it is that you're listening to this. And I want to read something in Matthew 5. You may be familiar with them. They're called the Beatitudes. It's, the blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Blessed are those who mourn, for they'll be comforted. We tend to just kind of gloss over these sometimes. We read them, we know them, but we're not really sure what they mean or if they apply to our life or if they just applied to those people that Jesus was speaking to. And one thing I can tell you after pastoring a couple of different churches over the past 7 years is that I'll put it this way. It's easy to find Christ, the love of Christ, the blessings, the perspective, all the things that go along with Him. They're easily found when you are with those that Jesus is kind of talking about here in these Beatitudes. For example, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Now, poor in spirit, some have said is a poverty of self. Maybe one way to put it is they know their need of God and redemption and forgiveness. And yes, sometimes it's easier to be around those people, and those people are blessed because they really don't have an agenda. And it says, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven, and that is their perspective. They have the right perspective. Blessed are those who are poor in spirit. They're not prideful. They're not worldly. Theirs is the kingdom of heaven. And if you want to be more like that, it doesn't mean you have to live in poverty. It means you must ask God to help you remain poor in your spirit, your knowledge of self. You become humble. You walk in humility. And that doesn't mean people get to push you around. It means that your strength comes from your poverty in your spirit. So it's not just about poor people. However, Jesus did say, the poor you will always have with you. And I think that's for a lot of us so that we never forget that one of our duties as a Christian is to help our neighbor. It goes on to say, blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. Now, we all mourn from time to time, and I think what the writer is talking about here is a deep mourning, a deep sadness. Those who understand that this world is not right, that people at their core can do some pretty bad things, and that we suffer loss, we suffer tragedy, we have grief. We all, if we're honest, will mourn. And if we mourn, if we are courageous enough to mourn, to cry out to God and seek His way through that, then we will be comforted. We'll obviously be comforted in ways that we can't really maybe identify when we find some strength that God is giving us. And then ultimately, when we're with Him, as our days come to an end, then that's the greatest comfort in the world, because we will be made right and we will be home. Matthew goes on. He says, blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. Meekness is not weakness. Meekness is allowing other people to be more important than you, listening to other people, those who think of others before they think of themselves. And it's not this meekness that the world talks about that makes you act like that you don't have worth. It's blessed are those who understand they don't know everything. Blessed are those who understand that it's a big world and we serve a big God, and we have to remain meek in our approach as we're called to be a witness for Christ. They will inherit. Now, inheriting the earth, I think, goes in a couple of different directions. We have an understanding the earth needs taken care of. We have an understanding that all of God's creation is linked together. And when we are meek, when we see a bigger picture, then we have the right perspective when it comes to all of God's creation, including the earth. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Now, it's great. We just had this conversation the other day. I was at a Bible study for some men who were just getting out of prison, and they were hungry for righteousness. They were ready. They were eager to do right. Okay. And we were talking to some other Christians that had been believers for a while, some men, mature men of the faith. And one of them said, well, I still have this hunger too. I don't think I'm doing enough to be righteous or to be right or to do right. So we have to really take this one and read it and kind of read between the lines here. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. But that filling doesn't mean that we're complete and that we won't be hungry anymore. Okay? So follow me on this. We're blessed when we're hungry and thirsty for God's righteousness, for his ways. Now, there are times in my life that I get filled with those things, that I seek him and I want to follow him, and I have experiences that make me feel like, yes, he's right there with me and he's filled that. But then tomorrow comes and I wake up and I'm still hungry. I'm hungry for it again. And so enemy does is whisper in your ear and say, well, see, you're still hungry for it. You're